Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, it's now a core business discipline. Welcome to 10-Minute Tech Talks, and I'm your host, Jonathan Kersting, the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech Vibe Radio. Today, we are on the ground at Cyburgh 2026 with Richard Evanchec, who is the special agent in charge of the FBI Pittsburgh Field Office. Talk to him following a keynote packed with practical guidance for business and technology leaders just like you. Richard cuts right to the core of ransomware readiness. He reveals what companies should be doing left of attack before something goes wrong. From stronger authentication and patching to offline backups and incident reporting, this conversation is a sharp reminder that cyber defense is not just a technical checklist, it is part of how a modern business operates. And with AI now supercharging fraud, deepfakes, and ransomware negotiations, the basics matter more than ever. Let's jump into this quick conversation with FBI Pittsburgh's Richard Evanchec.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. So informative what you talked about today. Some of it seems very basic in some ways, but the idea is keeping us secure. And the fact that the FBI is on our side here
Absolutely.
when something terrible does happen. So thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Great to be here. It was a great conference.
Yeah, I was learning so much. I'm taking notes furiously. I'm like, I got to ask you so many questions, but I want to keep it down to, you mentioned this one resource that I think everyone needs to know about, and you can talk about some of the tips and tricks, but the Winter Shield. If you go to FBI.gov/Winter Shield.
Correct. Yes.
I wrote that down. See,
Yes,
I
absolutely.
remembered it. And talking about what are some of the key things that businesses should just be thinking about. It's just a daily habit, basic practices. So that they don't get hacked and don't call you. And the big thing is that you want them to call you. If there is an incident, the FBI needs to know, and you want to be helpful, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. We're in the FBI. We talk often about left of attack, right? So that is that space where we can harden our defenses prior to an incident happening that makes us all safer. We don't ever want someone to have to call the FBI because there's been a catastrophic loss of data or some ransomware attack there. So what the FBI did is over this past winter, we started a campaign called Winter Shield. And Winter Shield is really, what are those best practices that cybersecurity practitioners could make sure they're employing in their systems to harden their defenses so that they're not being susceptible to some of these very sophisticated attacks. And when you look at that list and you go to that website that you mentioned, it's things like making sure, Cyber 101, we are not using default passwords, right?
Exactly.
Making sure that we are applying update patches to our software. Making sure that we have really phish-resistant authentication in our systems, to making sure that we have offline backups and that we test the recovery of data from backups should an event happen. So these are just very, I think, basic things that we expect our companies and our private sector to employ, but we recognize that sometimes there is a cost associated with these things. But these are just, I think, the ground level basic things that we want industry to be aware of, and just some tips that we have to make sure that if you do these things, we think you're going to be in better shape than you are now, potentially.
To get you off on the right foot. I think it's so important for people. I really encourage people to check it out because it's something, book through it and just, it reminds you, because I think we all get lost in our day to day. And one thing that's been big to me after covering cyber stuff forever is it has to be part of a company's culture. And the idea that it's just how we do business. And you brought this point up in a very unique way that I was really excited about when you brought up, is the fact that the CISOs and everyone, the management, C-suite should not be just thinking of this as an investment, but this is just how you do business, is to have the right tools, to have the right culture. Tell me more about why that's so important.
Sure, absolutely. So often when I speak to leaders in industry, they refer to investment in cybersecurity or money spent in cybersecurity as an investment. And I think investment does truly have, I think, a good connotation to it, but I can tell sometimes that it's an overhead, right? What we want to just create a change in culture, as you mentioned, is that cybersecurity and the money that we spend in cybersecurity has to be part of our everyday decision that we make in business to make sure that our systems are as safe as they can possibly be. You don't want to be in a situation where your data is stolen or is at risk, or you're at mission failure because you don't have access to your infrastructure, or that you're in a position where you're having to negotiate, do I pay $5 or $10 million to get my data back, right? And so often we go back and we look at how an attack happened, and it's difficult to see. You have end-of-life edge devices that should have been replaced 5 years ago. An investment of $50,000 could have avoided us from being here. So getting our business and our industry leaders to think more and more about cybersecurity as a part of our everyday business. It's not an investment that we make at the very end of our budget cycle, hoping that it's enough to fend off that attack. We want it to be a decision that we make every day to invest in it in a positive way to make sure that we're not getting to that terrible end result.
I'll give you an amen on that. That is 100%. One last question before you go. I know you're super busy. Is really looking at how AI is just supercharging all things around fraud and ransomware. It just seems like now AI is easier, less just to keep people getting hacked. So it makes all of these basics you're talking about to me seem all the more important. Obviously, am I seeing this trend?
Absolutely. AI is just enabling threat actors to be that much more efficient and that much more better, whether it's creating a deep fake that's going to trick some employee into thinking that they're talking to somebody that they know, or whether it's exploiting vulnerabilities in a system. AI is being used to increase the likelihood of a success for attacks. I think what's even a little bit crazier to think of is even after threat actors are stealing data, they're more and more using AI to run against that data set to figure out the value of that data and to figure out what is the most sensitive part of this data, so that they can leverage those lessons in their negotiations. So AI is being used everywhere from the bad actors. The good news is that more and more the good guys are using AI to make sure that we can help defend and bring people to justice that are doing these bad things.
It's such a thing. You mentioned that a lot of these hackers and ransom folks, they actually have HR departments. They're working out of office buildings. It's not just some lone person in a hoodie trying to make a fast buck, but it is literally a criminal enterprise. And thank God for resources like the FBI that help stamp this stuff out when it does happen. I think about the data that you collect at the end of the day, so you can use that towards fighting off more stuff. Amazing stuff. I have a million more questions, but I got to get you on your way because I know you're super busy. Can't thank you enough, Richard, for taking time to talk with me today. Great stuff. So glad to have you here in Cyburgh 2026.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time and good luck out there.
Fantastic stuff.
That was Richard Evanchec, Special Agent in charge of the FBI Pittsburgh Field Office, giving us a clear-eyed look at what businesses can do before cyber trouble shows up at the front door, wearing fake credentials and a bad attitude. The big takeaway, cybersecurity has to move from special project to everyday business practice. You can learn more about the FBI's Winter Shield cybersecurity guidance at fbi.gov/Winter Shield. And thanks for listening to 10-Minute Tech Talks from the Pittsburgh Technology Council. Keep building, keep protecting, and keep those digital doors locked.